Hello, and welcome back to the Steve and Mark Discuss podcast with myself, Mark, and my associate, Steve. The place where the humour may be dry, but the information flows. Anyway, Steve trawls through the media around the world and looks underneath everything to see what's coming in. And we try and analyze it and make sense of everything. So over to Steve, who's been beavering away this week to see what's going on.
Hi people, so straight into it. Yesterday was the anniversary of the second atomic bomb to be dropped this time on the town of Nagasaki in Japan, 78 years ago. If we had started this podcast at the time that it was meant to be started, we would have been exactly on the button, because it was 11:02 when the bomb was dropped. Of course, a few days before that, it was Hiroshima, that got a present from the US. But anyway, I digress. Let's go on to some of these news snippets that may not have gone all the way through the mainstream media, or the mainstream media paid little attention to them. So, Disease X is the latest announcement from the United Kingdom. It could be a mixture of monkeypox, bird flu, Lassa fever. All of them are diseases that come from animals. And the authorities in the UK are going to be using the laboratories at Portman Down. Portman Down is a military laboratory, and it's like the English version of COVID territory, the Wuhan laboratory in China. And what they're going to be doing is researching for a vaccine that's going to cure this disease that doesn't exist yet, which to me is a little bit backside to the front.
Yeah.
How can you make a vaccine to a disease that you don't know what it is? So if I was a conspiracy theorist, which I'm not,
No.
I could say that they're doing this because they're going to launch a new disease, a new pandemic, create a new pandemic, and they might be saying this just to keep everybody calm at the moment. But on the same vein, in the same vein, Pfizer, while this was happening in the UK, Pfizer was giving a meeting with the authorities in Australia. And what came out of that meeting was quite interesting, because Pfizer admitted that the vaccines that they gave their own workers were very different from the vaccine that was given to the public. It was separate. And a lot of people have been questioning this, why was it separate? And who else got these vaccines that were given just for the workers? Because we don't know, it might have just been saline solution. Might have just been salt and water, Were heads of state just given this same vaccine vaccine.
Yeah, well, this
Free,
isn't.
free speech march, you know.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a new. Oh, sorry, technical issue. This isn't a new problem or new conspiracy. That's been said a few times. The politicians made a big thing about stretching their arm and having the needle put in. It was they said that as saline solution going in. Yeah, I mean that. Yes, there's a lot of strange things coming out, being said. I mean, people have every right to question what's going on, and this is what it is. And any dissenting voices have been silenced. Probably, yeah. I mean, we're intelligent people. We can sometimes say, well, that's a stretch too far. As you said, neither of us are conspiracy theorists. As much as we like to enjoy talking about it sometimes, we're not actually conspiracy theorists. Although there's some things that I thought were quite incredible and no, that wouldn't happen, have come to light that, yes, the evidence is there. The smoking gun, as it were. So, yeah, as regards to that. Anyway, I just thought I'd interject there. Just, state that this isn't a new thing.
You're becoming to be a segue man. You're going to be segue man.
Segue man. I like that.
It's brought into another subject that I was going to touch on, I'll put it in a different order now because of what you just said. Which is, of course, there should be no problem if you question. You have a free voice, and you should be able to question. And it seems that Donald Trump recently has one of his latest indictments was the fact that he was questioning the 2020 elections.
Yes.
And should he be allowed to question the election? Of course he should. Of course,
Yeah.
If he thinks it was wrong, then why not?
Yeah.
But the Justice Department, for good or for bad, seem to think that that's not really kosher. They think that it should be taboo. But you remember around about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, we did a podcast and I mentioned that Imran Khan and Bolsonaro, they were all being sued by the justice in their own particular countries. All of them populists. We now know that Bolsonaro, he's being banned from entering in politics for a certain number of years, and if he wants to, he's going to be an old man when he does.
Yeah. Well.
Imran Khan, he's just been sentenced a few days ago to 3 years in prison for corruption that he insists is just bogus, But came out last night, just to prove that I don't sleep.
Yeah.
Came out last night that the US sent a message to the cable, was received by Ambassador Assad Khan in Pakistan. Who sent it was a guy called Donald Lu.
Yeah.
From the US. And basically he said, if you don't get rid of Imran Khan, there's going to be some problems. If you can get rid of him, because at the time, Imran Khan, he was the Prime Minister of Pakistan.
Yeah.
And so this Donald Lu, he said sent this cable to called a cipher. Actually, it's called a cipher. It's a message that he sends.
Yeah.
It gets encrypted.
Of course,
When
yeah.
it reaches its destination, then they
Peer-to-peer, yeah.
uncrypt, and then you can
Yeah.
see what it says.
Mm.
And he just said that, you know, if you can get him out of power, everything between the US and
Yeah.
Pakistan, it's going to be fine.
Right. Yeah.
Imran,
So,
what triggered that is
yeah.
that Imran Khan, he didn't want to get involved
Mm.
with the Russia-Ukraine
Mm.
situation. He said, you know, and the US didn't like it. So this Ambassador Khan got the cable.
Mm.
The day after, um, I, I found this information on an interview with a guy between Imran Khan and a guy from a site called Revolver.
Yeah.
He said the day after, apparently, uh, the House of Commons in Pakistan
Mm.
made a vote of no confidence in him, in Imran Khan,
Mm.
ousted him, and that wasn't enough. They had to charge him
Well,
so that he couldn't run again either.
yeah.
And so they sentenced him to 3 years, and it's a bogus charge. However,
Mm.
that's how the news presented it. You know, it's not. I didn't embellish anything.
No. No.
Just saying how the news came out that this guy, he was sentenced to 3 years. That he in an interview said that
Mm.
the charges were bogus. Of course, a politician would do.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
politics. Nobody's an angel.
well,
We know that.
no, you can't be. Yeah. I mean, an honest politician is no good to anyone. But yeah, that's the old saying. Yeah. It's. I mean, yeah. I'm going to address these. I mean, with regards to questioning voting, I always understood, yeah, you are allowed to question anything in the process. Yeah, I mean, okay, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. We all know that. He is a showman. He makes big things. You can argue how successful he was for the US or not. It was going to always be a close election. Now, I've been doing some of my own research about this electronic voting. I did some a while ago, and then I've just dipped in recently because I had I was discussing it with someone here in Brazil about electronic, and the shock that the UK doesn't employ electronic voting. I actually found a podcast by a British tech guy that I'll post the link down below if people want to watch, citing what are the issues with electronic voting, which we have in Brazil, which they have to a certain extent in the US, yeah, and what can occur and why. Because there was a big issue in the US elections over this electronic voting, and again, questions in Brazil, and I'm not going to put myself in trouble here because you can be. But yeah, we'll look at the US. None of us really understand enough about the voting, the electronic voting. It's like me asking you, will you vote on my behalf? But it's not quite a proxy vote. And you say, yes, I'll do that for you. And it made the equivalent. And this is it. So you put your number into there. You don't agree with it? Yeah.
No. There's a guy in the United States called Mike Lindell.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
He's the guy who sells the My Pillow.
Yeah.
My Pillow.
Yeah.
You know? And he had a meeting, a huge event.
Mm.
I believe it was if it wasn't last year, I think it was last year in August.
Yeah.
Sometime around then. And he gave the audience, he just went out on the stage and he said, right, the first person who can hack this machine, which is a voting machine.
Yeah.
I think they won something like $500 or something
Yeah.
like that. And within 3 minutes, a young lad managed to hack the machine. the, the powers that be in the United States swore blind that the machines were not linked onto the internet. However, images showed
Mm.
that the machines have modems.
Well,
And
yes.
if you have a modem, you have access to the internet.
Well, it's exactly what this guy, this is the pre-election, was saying. And he's not a big channel. You know, it's not a major channel, but he's evidently knows what he's discussing. Been around for a few years. Yeah.
But I don't think it was a case of somebody voting on your behalf.
No.
Physically going in.
No. But
although there were some people impersonating other people, but not necessarily with their consent, you know.
Well, I mean, this is it. I mean, ID voting has just been introduced in the UK. That does actually have quite a good record of voting, of good integrity voting. Okay, we've had some problems with mail-in ballots in the UK, or postal ballots. And yeah, I know the regions, I know the areas, and I'm not going to go into that now. But it is there is no such thing as an absolute purely secure voting system. Never has been. It's impossible. I mean, yeah, the other thing is to say voting by Facebook or other things. And again, there's an article. Now, there was a research actually done by the European Union, which more or less, gave a no to this as well. Voting is a fundamental right for anyone over the age of voting, of age. And therefore, our ability to question if we don't agree should be fundamental in our rights anywhere there's a democracy, because that's how you improve. If they do research and find there's something gone wrong, that's improving the voting system, so improving democracy, as it were. How long before they make it enshrined in law that you can't question it? It's all sacrosanct. You will accept this. And we all know countries in the world where that probably does occur, that on the face of it are democracy, but you still can't really vote for anyone else. It is a worrying trend. I mean, it's all tied in, I think, with Donald Trump and what happened in January the 6th and everything else. That it's a very strange case, that is, even reading as a non-lawyer, and I'm not a lawyer. I've heard lawyers give very, very good, who are not necessarily Donald Trump or Republican supporters, who are questioning it.
Well, just for the January 6th panel, you know, the all the documentation of that panel has been lost, or destroyed.
Well, of course.
Right. So there's nobody can say what was found out officially by that panel, because all the documentation has been lost. But coming back to Mike Lindell, on the 17th, in 7 days' time, he's going to have a symposium. He says he's going to present a way of voting that has never been seen before. Never been seen before. He said that both sides of the aisle, in the case of the US, will agree to it because it's so perfect. It's so and so everybody's with bated breath, waiting for Mr. Lindell come with his idea.
No, probably not having ballot harvesting around graveyards might be a good move. I'm joking, by the way, people. It's satire. Okay. It is I mean, I'd be interested to hear that, because I mean, obviously there's very strict laws, and obviously I'll do some lessons about politics. I'm an English teacher in Brazil that's not scared to do the lessons about politics. I never impart my own judgments. We have discussions, different systems really, and vocabulary used. Because I'd never wish to, in the position I am, to indoctrinate or force somebody to vote against their will. In fact, we do have discussions. I have people who probably disagree with me about everything, but enjoy the lessons. And what's the point in having an English lesson if you agree? At one point, I've been one of the most strictest communists ever in Brazil, one of the most extreme communists. Or I've been, yeah, I certainly wouldn't be a fascist, but yeah, one of the most extreme capitalists. So yeah, it is it's an interesting discussion to have, and this idea, this notion of clean elections and everything else is certainly interesting. In the UK, I mean, there's so many eyes and everybody else watches it. If you go in, for people who've never voted in the UK, you've got people everywhere watching, and you go there. And I mean, yeah, you get people of both different styles of sitting around having a cup of tea, watching what's going on. Yeah. Because I think there's one thing all these people want, and that is something that is above question. Obviously, everyone wants their candidate to win, but we want it to be done with integrity. I'd like to think that is an English trait, or British trait, sorry, I should say. And you and I both know we're honest, Steve. You know, we'd like to see that. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. I mean, yeah, this is again conjecture. Again, I'd be interested to hear what he has to say. I've not yet known a purely, in probably 2,000 years of voting, has probably never been the perfect system.
Yeah.
Electronic systems have made it a little bit more untransparent. In theory, you should be able to ask for the data to prove it's good. The authorities should be able to hand over the data, prove without doubt that the election is above question, and everybody should be happy.
Yep.
Anyway,
it's a wonderful world. Moving on.
Yeah.
The economy in the UK and the US.
Yeah.
Somebody is somebody's nose is growing somewhere. You know, Pinocchio nose.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
In the UK, the Bank of England rose. The government swore blind that they've got the strongest economy in Europe now, and you know it's all positive and it's all. So the Bank of England a couple of days ago rose the interest rates, which basically crippled anybody who's got a mortgage.
Yeah.
Or even who's renting, because the landlords, a lot of landlords, they buy houses to rent them.
Yeah.
And so to cover their mortgage, they have to put the rent up and still have enough money for them to make a living.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on, yeah, there could be a lag in that. It depends what your agreements are. You can't suddenly midterm decide to increase the the renting. Yeah.
But once again, yesterday, the director of the Bank of England, I've forgotten his name, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
He said that the food prices are going to continue to rise and be high until, depending on which article you read, ranges from the end of this year to February of next year. So, you know, we must speak to somebody from the UK.
Yeah, I'll put a call out. I'll try and get somebody who can give us some answers.
And in the US also, the Bidenomics.
Yeah.
Of, you know, it's all going to pot. Joe Biden, he's saying that, you know, it's all working.
Yeah.
However, we must look at the details and, you know, and not just speak just from the top of our heads. I was looking at New York office space. It's declined 33%.
Yeah.
The value of the office space, or $58 billion since the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, the UK seems to be following suit.
Yeah, of course.
When it comes to office, when it comes to commercial property, and China. Last year, I was on about Evergreen in China. Although Evergreen was more about residential.
Yeah.
They had those schemes of you buy your apartment before it's built.
Yeah.
They'll build it, and then you got your apartment for a lot less than cost
Yeah.
was a lot less. They do the same thing here in Brazil.
Yeah.
However, Evergreen had been spending its money on other things,
Mm.
which were not building apartments, and they overspent, and it started to collapse there. Except that China, the government of China, propped them up.
Mm.
But it seems like there's a second wave now this year,
Mm.
of basically the same thing, where the constructors aren't paying their bills
No.
to the suppliers of the raw materials.
Mm.
And so what you have is China, the UK,
Mm.
the United States,
Yeah.
all, and Germany. Germany, Germany admitting it's in a recession. Germany, the powerhouse of the European Union, in
Yeah.
recession. In fact, Germany has been complaining they want more power. They want more power in the European Union. Which, I mean, the last time that Germany wanted more power in that stage, it was in 1939, wasn't it?
Well,
We have to be careful what we say.
yeah, yeah. I wouldn't want to imply this isn't every German. I've worked with many Germans, and they're very nice chaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know that probably they're out of tune, or their leadership are probably out of tune with what they actually want.
Yeah. But anyway, in Germany, the powers that be in Germany, they're wanting more. They want a bigger piece of the cake, I think, basically. But
well, I mean, it is a funny thing in Europe. I mean, yeah, for over 1,000 years, us Europeans have all been fighting for who's going to have the biggest slice of the cake. I mean, really, that's what Brexit was over.
yeah,
And it's been since the 1970s, effectively. When you look at the history of the EU, and I've just diverse, and it's Margaret Thatcher actually saved the EU back in the 80s. It's always been about power, and obviously it was always the big three: Germany, France, and the UK. And the big three players it still appears to be in the EU are Germany, France, and the UK. Although UK are out of it. Yeah, they don't want us to go. It's like trying to leave a party and then standing at the door pushing you back in. Oh no, you don't want to go yet. You don't want to leave yet. There's still the best things to come. Yeah, I mean, okay, Germany. Yeah, I mean, they bounced back well after the war, probably with American money. US rebuilt by the US effectively, and Russia. Let's not forget, it was a split country. Russia put a lot of resources into that as well. Yeah, the East Germans were very ungrateful and decided they want to link in with the West Germans. It again, I mean, yeah, but when we're talking about this, yes, the construction industry is always the barometer of the economies, wherever you are. I mean, yeah, I'm not saying anything out of, that's not known here. I don't know how well the construction industry in the UK is. It seems to be pretty stable, looking at the amount of jobs there are there at the moment. Why that is, I've probably got to build accommodation for certain people soon. It is a yeah, I mean, Germany, I believe on the ground the Germans are very, very concerned where their country is being taken into effectively.
in the UK, I'm not too sure about new builds. About if they've got a boom, because with this rate hike
Yeah.
by the Bank of England, people who have already got the mortgage
Mm.
can't keep up.
No.
And people who are trying to get the mortgage, all of a sudden they need to find another, I don't know how many £1,000 before they can even get onto the ladder.
Well,
So I'm not sure, and houses are losing their value because nobody with the used house market.
Yeah.
Because everybody's in limbo.
Yeah.
You know, there isn't much move. There isn't a lot of movement.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, I know very few people who actually own now. I know a lot of people who have, managed to clear their mortgages. I haven't heard of anyone who's actually buying, certainly not under the age of 35 at the moment. It is I mean, okay. Yeah, and even, I mean, yes, as you said, people have been buying to rent, which again, in my hometown, I think the local council are trying to stop so much of that.
They're putting in legislation where to rent a house,
Yeah.
for a consumer to rent a house,
Mm.
they have to jump through so many hoops.
Yeah.
And if they're it's almost like you could be. You've talked about East Germany.
Yeah.
You could be forgiven for thinking that it might be similar to that, where now if a landlord is found
Mm.
to have somebody who's illegal
Yeah.
in the house that he's renting,
Mm.
he gets fined. I think it's something like £6,000 or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I mean, it's the same
How
sort
are
of
you
thing.
going to prove if how is somebody going to prove if they are legal or not in the UK?
I mean,
Because
yeah.
we don't have ID cards, do we?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I will say this. I mean, that's one thing about Brazil, carrying my ID card. I carry a copy about with me because I don't want to lose the real one, the actual one. But I'm not sure if that's legal or not, but it's an indication to a policeman if he wants to check my credentials. Yeah, it is I mean, yes, one thing I have found useful. I mean, when I was buying a house, and this is going back to 90, no, probably 2003, something like that. I had to prove where I'd been for the past 7 years. And I'm a citizen and where my money comes from. And I know people are having to deal across Europe. I mean, if you give someone a loan, yes. If you give somebody a loan for a house, you've got to prove where the money came from. Yeah, I mean, living in the UK, and I know this, and I don't know about the US or anywhere else, living in the UK is getting more and more difficult to prove anything. And even if somebody's got some money to buy something, you have to prove where that money has come from. So, and if you can imagine, if I live in Brazil, if I had suddenly got even millions of dollars and suddenly decided to move back to UK and buy somewhere, I can't prove where I've been and what I've been doing for the past X amount of years. If you understand what I'm saying. I mean, the last time I tried to get a job in the UK, working in a prison, funny enough, I would have to prove my security clearance. And the guy said to me, he said, where have you been? Or what can you, where you been? Well, I've been living in Brazil. And he sort of gave me a wry smile and said, oh, yeah. Yeah, I said, oh, yeah, okay. He said, yeah, can you prove that? And I suddenly realized I didn't have really any documentation that would mean anything to anyone in the UK where I've been and what I was.
The
Yeah.
Brazilian ID card.
Yeah, it's still, but if you show that to, the last time I flew back to the UK, I showed that at the immigration or where you go for, not immigration, where you go through to put your baggage in, and said, have you got a return from UK back to UK? I said, well, no, I live there. He said, can you prove that? And I showed her the ID card, and the girl there had never seen it, the R&E card. They had to go off and ask her supervisor.
That's ignorance on her part.
Well, I wouldn't like to say that. I mean, yeah, she did everything she could, and we resolved it. So, I mean,
It reminds me of a time many years ago
mm,
when I lived in Switzerland
mm,
and I had a monthly train pass.
yeah,
And when you buy your train pass, I handed my little plastic wallet
yeah,
that you took your train pass in with and gave it to the person, paid the money, they
mm,
put the train pass in the wallet and gave me the wallet back.
yeah,
In Zurich, I was one time in Zurich, the guard asked to see my train pass, and I showed him my train pass. He said, it's not good.
mm,
I said, really? And he says, yeah, come with me. And I have to go to the offices
yeah,
to prove that my train pass was good.
mm,
And eventually I did manage to prove that the train pass was good. And he said, well, why doesn't it have this part? There's a part of it missing. Why doesn't it have this part?
Mm.
And my reply to him was, well, it isn't me that puts the cards into the wallets. You're talking to the wrong person. Because it's ignorance on his part. He
Yeah,
could have
well,
asked
okay.
me. He should know that. And even I had to show him the date on the on the train pass. I had to show the date on the train pass because it was encrypted. It's a little bit like on your passport. If you
Yeah.
have a look at your date of birth on your passport,
Mm.
in that printed line at the bottom, it's not the same as it appears on the top.
Yeah.
And because of this train pass didn't have a piece of information written
Yeah.
in German, I suppose.
Mm.
He got all shirty. But there
Yeah.
you go. I digress.
Yeah. Anyway, we're coming to the end of our Zoom imposed time limit. So, is there any more
It
subjects?
seems to be a history reminiscing
Yeah. Well,
of our times in
hope.
times in Europe.
Well, actually, I mean, yes, hopefully, I mean, yes, this could be very good for any English learners or people learning English as a foreign language to hear how British people to talk about things with our good tongue-in-cheek humour and how we deal with issues with a smile at all times and respectfully and without aggression. And as I always say to my students, you always know how annoyed an English person is by how polite they are becoming with you. The more angry we are, the politer we become. Yes. So something to bear in mind culturally. But yeah, so I think it's been quite interesting. We've covered two very major things. I mean, obviously, what is happening to political leaders around the world for questioning about elections, certainly from my point of view, is of concern. And particularly people who do have still some popular support. We have to watch what's happening in India, given that it's a country that is, sorry, Pakistan, given it is a country that's that could really annoy some people. Yeah, Pakistan, given it's a country that is on the rise, potentially.
Yeah.
History is littered with these odd things that do happen, and very often they do get resolved one way or another.
Well, we're still here.
Yeah,
we're still here.
Yeah, that's it. So life will continue. You'll keep continuing monitoring it. I will keep looking at it, and hopefully next week we'll be able to come with some more information about what's happening, even some updates maybe of what we've been discussing in the past and where we are with them now. We've actually been quite successful in some of our predictions, or Steve has, and I've been thinking about things. And yeah, we are actually ahead of the mainstream media, whether that's because they do more research than we do and check their facts, or we do check the facts. There is a lot of cross-referencing done when we do things, and we obviously always state our sources.
We're about 2 days ahead of the mainstream media.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a lot of reasons for that. I mean, they have watchdogs looking over their shoulder. We don't. Although GB News seems to tell the truth and still ends up in a lot of trouble. Yeah, so rather interesting. If you enjoyed this discussion, can you please like, subscribe, and share it? Thank you.